last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, greetings, salutations, Dark Matter Radio fans here and there and everywhere. Welcome back to another brand new edition of DMR right here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Tonight we're going to have a very interesting and special show with a guy that I have known off and on for over, practically 30 years. He was, as a young fella, a fan of my original radio show, my first radio show, UFOs Tonight. Back when it was on the cable radio network, you could hear us from Alaska to Hawaii, from the West Coast to the East Coast on satellite radio. Now, back in those days, when I was fresh and young and just getting into the topic real good, because at that time and for years after, I was the director of research for UFO Magazine. We hit a lot of topics. And tonight, we're going to be talking about one of those topics with a film that my guest tonight, Mr. Stephen Bradford, just completed not too awfully long ago. And it is on a very interesting gentleman and subject, somebody that I have known going back to the late 1980s. His name is Norio Hayakawa. Now, Norio has an interesting history. Originally Japanese, he is of Japanese ancestry. At that time, he was very good friends and associates with another fellow out here in sunny Southern California, a guy by the name of Gary Schultz. Now, what they were involved in ended up being the Area 51 conundrum. Okay, this was after television journalist George Knapp broke the story on Robert Bob Lazar. Okay, and Gary Schultz and Norio Hayakawa became frequent visitors out to the black mailbox. If you know anything about that, you'll recognize that term, the black mailbox, where allegedly, the government was attempting to fly recovered alien objects, not from this planet, and back engineer them. Now, during this period of time, another guy entered the scene, and this is going to get just a little bit into the weeds, but his name that he was going by wasn't his real name. I knew his real name. Was a fellow going by the name of Michael Younger. Now, my very close friend, now since passed over several years ago, Richard Saraday, and I I was introduced to Michael Younger by Richard. Younger wanted to get in touch with me. Some very weird, wonky stuff transpired, but apparently Michael Younger had intelligence contacts. Now, at that time, we're talking roughly 35 years ago. MJ12, you've heard of MJ12, I'm sure, but MJ12 was one of the top tier, allegedly covert, highly secretive covert UFO groups, supposedly with their thumb on the topic. But another group entered the fray and was fronted by this Michael Younger character called Com 12. Now, I never knew what the hell to make out of it. Younger did have a lot of information that he was getting from somewhere. I even interviewed him several times on my original radio show. And got to tell you, I was fairly skeptical, like I'm wont to be. And eventually, I think I kind of drove Michael Younger off. I don't understand how or why. He allegedly had been a former Marine, then maybe in the Navy. I never really quite got it all sorted out. But the upshot was he ended up dead on some railroad tracks out here. Very strange story. But I digress. We got off into the weeds a little bit, like I was afraid we might do. At any rate, Mr. Stephen Bradford, my friend and associate going back almost 30 years, when I was on Cyberstation USA, okay, a number of years ago, before I first came to KGRA, when I was on Cyberstation on Friday evenings, I was doing 5 days a week then. I was doing a show every night. We would take the day off, so to speak, and kind of have an open panel, if you will. Richard Saraday, my buddy, was usually physically in studio with me, and Cyberstation was carrying the signal from out of Boston, Massachusetts. And we had a number of regulars that would get on the line with us. There was a guy by the name of Dana Ward. There was another guy by the name of Vince. I can't think of his last name. There was another fellow by the name of Ryan and Stephen. And Stephen was usually the one guy that kind of kept it all hanging together. I could always count on some very intelligent observations from Stephen. So, a number of months ago, Stephen used to live out here in California. He's now back on the East Coast, East Southern Coast. And his job, his day job, often takes him out and about. But I had wanted to get him back on the show since I'm back here at KGRA DB. And Stephen said, sure. So we finally were able to arrange tonight. Now, with that being said, let me bring on Mr. Gary Cassell, our usual co-host here. And hey, Gary.
Hey, Brad. I'm going to behave today.
Yeah, you better, you son of a bitch. And Stephen, come on board, buddy. You got any corrections there, pal?
No, Don, that was a very gracious introduction, and I appreciate it. And I think more importantly, it's great to be back on your radio show here with KGRA.
Well, super duper. What I said about Norio and Gary Schultz, of course, you're familiar with all of that. Michael Younger. Now, I of course have seen your documentary that you did. A lot of people may not have. It's not yet in general release, is it?
No, it's not. We're trying to get it on a few of the streaming platforms. However, I'm more than happy to share the link with you and your audience, and they can go ahead and watch it at any time. But yeah, that was an interesting documentary. Don, you might not know this, but the impetus of that documentary was actually going to be about Richard. That was the documentary that I wanted to do. That was the one that we had discussed privately. Unfortunately, COVID happened and we weren't able to do that. But one of my last conversations with Richard is he disclosed to me that he had some new information on Michael Younger that he was uncomfortable sharing over the phone, and he wanted me to join him in his backyard and discuss it. And this is obviously—
Are you talking about Richard Saturday?
Correct. Yeah, this was in the middle of the pandemic, and I told Richard, I said, you've already have your health issues. I would be uncomfortable coming over, given the circumstances, and discussing this, face to face. And Richard, in his cavalier way, was like, "Oh, that's BS. Just we'll go in the backyard and have a beer and we'll talk." He said, "Well, Strieber was just there. I think Strieber moved or was looking to move to Topanga Canyon, and the two of them had connected during the pandemic and they were hanging out." And then unfortunately, he passed away not too long thereafter. But the original documentary was going to be on Richard Saturday and some of his, the quiet researcher type narrative. However, he passed away, and I really wanted somebody of a similar age with an equally colorful past that has ties to many of the same people, and that ended up being Norio. And so I reached out to Norio, and we established a dialogue and agreed to meet up. And we spent, I think, 3 different trips to New Mexico to film with him at various locations. And, I'm proud of the documentary. I think it's good. I think that there's some things I would do differently, but, Norio's an interesting guy. He keeps his guard up. So getting access to him and getting him comfortable took a little bit of time, but I think ultimately the documentary was successful. We've won quite a few film awards with that documentary. And I think really what it does is it highlights not only Norio in a proper way, but also that era in UFO history, those what I like to call the golden years of the 80s and early 90s, where things were just absolutely insane. You had the MJ-12 papers released, you had Bill Moore, you had Bob Lazar, you had the first introduction to the public that Area 51 was a real location that no one knew about.
And then, of course, the infamous video.
Yeah, correct.
Autopsy.
Correct. You had the alien autopsy. You had the STS-48 that Don broke on CNN. So I think I don't really, we're sort of getting to that point now with what's going on in the mainstream. But I think the 90s, with the advent of X-Files and so forth, was probably, in my mind, the golden era of modern ufology, in the sense that it was inundated everywhere. It was in pop culture. It was in movies. It was in television. It was on hard copy. It was on sightings. It was on the show Encounters. It was on Unsolved Mysteries. It was a real enigma at that time.
This is gonna sound self-serving, but my wife and I were in the middle, literally, of all of that.
Yes, 100%, Don. And maybe we can explore that in the second documentary, Don. We'll think about that. We'll talk. But I've just always, since I was a child, had a fascination, not just with the topic, but more specifically that era and really how it correlated to the governmental cover-up. I'm not a big abductee guy. I'm not really big in getting into some of the new age stuff and the Pleiadians. I really like the rock solid stuff. Like, this is things that are happening. This is how the government's reacting. This is their disinformation reply to what's happening. And I think that sort of cloak and dagger interplay between the topic of UFOs, the colorful people in the field, and then you've got the governmental agents that are trying to sort of steer this in a particular direction, is what really fascinates me more than possibly the gray aliens, or whether or not there's bodies out at, Kirkland Air Force Base or wherever. So I think that the documentary really covered that. It really gave Norio a platform to express his views without us really weighing in too much on our opinions. And Norio probably was one of the most gracious, kindest, and interesting people I've ever met. And I'm excited to share, the documentary with your listening audience. I think they'll enjoy it.
Well, that's damn nice of you, Stephen. Damn nice. Well, the intelligence aspects of the United States government, military and civilian intelligence, have always had a huge hook in this whole thing. They've denied it for 70 plus years, but it's plain to see for anybody that knows how to look. They've been there. They've destroyed lives. They've lied continuously about this. And in light of recent events, especially going back to December of 2017, with Senator Harry Reid, the former senior senator from Nevada, now deceased, announcing to the press that he was instrumental in securing roughly $22 million for a program to examine and investigate this aerial phenomena. Things suddenly opened up after years of being quiet, okay? And I've seen this happen before with the topic. It would run strong for a number of years and then just kind of bleed away, okay? Just kind of die away. In the early 90s up to about 96, 97, you literally could not turn on the television, Stephen, without being inundated with one UFO show after another, encounters, hard copy, a current affair, paranormal, whatever the hell that was, encounters, I think it was. And it seems like we're kind of going through that now, right? But it's going to be interesting in light of what is currently going on in the last 2 weeks and several days since this dastardly, unbelievable attack on Israel. You know, the world right now could be within a half inch of totally going to war. I've never in my lifetime seen anything this dire. Hell, I was 2 tours in Southeast Asia in the war. And you know what? I never felt as trepidatious as I do now with what's happening in the Middle East with Israel, sending a couple of naval battle groups over there, what's happening between China and Taiwan, North Korea acting up, Russia and the Ukraine. What's your take on all this, pal?
I mean, obviously, I think, the events that happened in the Middle East, and I think the world's response to it really has put the world on notice that we're really a few steps away from a potential world conflict. I mean, one of the things that I also enjoy studying is international relationship politics and, just foreign affairs. And people don't understand, everybody's just stuck to their iPhones and their Kardashians, how serious this conflict is and how quickly it can grow. And I agree with you, Don. I think that this is a time in American history where people need to wake up and pay attention and make sure that, they're prepared for this, because you're about to have full out turmoil in the Middle East. You have China looking at Taiwan. You have North Korea. You have Iran making, not even veiled threats, direct threats to Israel, which, Israel is the one country that you probably maybe don't want to do that to, because they don't really, play around when it comes to their security. This could get very bad very quickly. And you see 100,000 people at the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon calling death to America. It's not good. It's not good.
Would you say that it's almost as hot as it was in 1983 with that near nuclear war with Russia?
I'm more concerned that it's hotter in the sense that I think the next war is not going to be one that's fought with
it's going to be boots on the ground
and soldiers. Well, it could be, but also that you're going to have a technological war and an information war, and you're going to have things like power grids going out and internet's going out, satellites no longer functioning, and you're going to have total chaos happen in society. So you're not
nobody considers that with how porous our border has been.
Our border is, but
that is a huge threat against us.
I mean, the idea of two battleships sitting across from each other and shooting, mortars at each other just doesn't seem very technological to me. I think what's going to happen is when this really gets serious is you're just going to see satellites go down, banking systems shut down, infrastructure collapse, and you're going to have societal panic. You're not going to have to deploy one troop. Okay, United States, we're surrounded by water, so it's going to be hard to do a land invasion. But yeah, you don't need to do a land invasion if you can create societal panic by shutting down the banking system, taking out power grids, shutting down satellites, no internet. That's you're going to eat yourself from the inside out. So my worry isn't so much about what this looks like from dropping conventional arms and weapons on other countries. It's more going to be, what is their capabilities technologically? Can they shut down our banking system? How solid is our power grid? Who's coming across that border, and what are their motives? We don't know. I read there's 2,200. There's 2,200 cells. They just said, though, one of the intelligence guys spoke on one of the networks, and it was not a tinfoil hat guy. He says they're tracking over 2,200 active known terrorists that are possibly working in this country right now in a variety of ways, and they don't know what to expect. So, and the thing that scares me the most is you've got these population centers. The next one's not going to be a 9/11. It's going to be more like population centers, malls, like true panic, really true panic. They're going to go where the people are at.
Yep.
And that's what's scary. So, well, I'm aware of it. I just don't know that most Americans watching their sports and their Kardashians understand how serious this is. And how that relates to the UFO question, I'm not sure. But it does seem that this topic is being used in the media at very specific times to almost deflect from what's going on in other places. And as Don knows, and and anybody
like a wag the dog thing,
correct?
Right?
Anyone that understands this topic knows that the government loves to use this topic in very specific ways to sort of distract or mislead the public. As much as they might want to get to the bottom of it, it's also a tool for them to go out there and spread disinformation. So I'm a little skeptical about a lot of the things that we've been seeing in the Congress and some of these people that have come forward. I do think there's a genuine mystery here, but all of this just seems oddly timed to me, given what's happening geopolitically. That's just my take on it.
I gotta say one thing, and this may sound like it's in the suburbs compared to what we're just talking about, but I started thinking about this almost immediately. All right, when the news broke that Israel was being attacked from the south, okay, Hamas coming up. Now, I hadn't looked into it, but I made the assumption that those people had especially as close to a hostile border as they were, had access to private firearms, okay? And when I looked into it, I discovered that Israel, of all places, had draconian gun laws that made it very, very difficult for the average Joe Blow citizen to go buy himself a rifle or a pistol.
Isn't that crazy? When you run that, because it freaked me out. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And if you could secure a license, you had to have a license. So you had to apply for a license before they would issue the permit. Then you could go get your gun. You were limited to 50 rounds of ammunition per year. Now, I imagine myself in that situation, and I could go through 50 rounds in about 10 minutes, okay? If that. I just couldn't believe it. It was beyond the pale. What do you think about that, Stephen?
I think that it would be interesting to see such a attempted invasion in like West Texas.
Yeah, imagine if some of those citizens had been armed.
Right.
When they did that, it would have turned out a little different.
This is, if people know their history, they know that there was a similar lapse in intelligence when Israel was attacked in the 80s, right?
Yom Kippur in 73.
Correct, right. And this seems eerily similar. And, anytime you see these intelligent lapses, especially by modern countries that have some of the best intelligence in the world, I'm immediately skeptical of what's going on, because we saw this on 9/11. We've got the best intelligence. They had briefings that literally said people are going to crash planes into buildings, and yet there was no real response. Similarly, in this situation, you've got Israel, probably arguably the best intelligence in the world, and they didn't see this coming. And again, it just could be a lapse, but again, it could just be, there's some bad actors out there in a lot of capacities in government and elsewhere. And I just worry that that was not an organic attack, that there was possibly some potential malfeasance there. It was just too blatant. They came over. It wasn't just an isolated event. It was a full-on invasion. They flew over in those personal aircraft with fans on the back and parachutes with machine guns mounted to the front. It was just absolutely insane to look at those pictures. It's shocking that happened to me personally, given how serious Israel is about their security. Their security is, you visit there, it's locked down. So the idea that this happened is frankly shocking.
Well, it's practically mandatory military service,
right?
Oh, absolutely. And that was the issue when they had the Yom Kippur War, was the slow response and the lack of. That's really what forced them to really look at how they respond to this and build their military up so they can be quicker in their response. But this wasn't good. This is not going to bode well for Israel politically, their current leadership politically, and the fallout from this is just going to, right now they're in the midst of it, but once this settles down, there's going to be, I think, a massive change in the way Israel's governed and maybe who is even governing.
Well, they've got to make some big changes, because I don't know how and when this gun control thing.
Yeah, I don't know about that for sure. Certainly. I do know that most of the citizens under a certain age, they're deemed a service. So I've seen.
Yeah, so they're trained.
Yeah.
And the reason why Switzerland isn't attacked is because every citizen is expected to be armed and serve their country and defend the country.
Yeah.
So nobody's invaded Switzerland for that very reason.
Yeah. No, it's a difficult situation in the Middle East. I know that the previous administration had the Abrams Accord. Things seem to be going well. This administration seems to have taken their eye off a few balls. I'm not being overly political, but I think strength through leadership, or strength through power is one of those things that works. You have to project strength, and right now we're not doing that. And our enemies look at this and they're emboldened. China's looking at the Ukraine invasion and saying, okay, we can maybe do Taiwan next. And Iran's looking at this, at Israel right now at a low point, and I hate to see what they might do. So once these things start to happen, it's going to be a chain reaction, like all world wars are, right? That's how each one starts, with one seemingly small event that sort of dominoes into a massive world war. And I think, when we look back historically, this invasion, if you will, might be, the straw that broke the camel's back, frankly. We'll see. I hope not. I hope the adults come to the table, but I haven't seen many.
Well, I hate to say it, but I don't have a lot of faith in the current leadership running this country. I guess I'll let it lie there, but I've got problems. Well, a lot of this, once again, comes down to the intelligence services, the puppet masters, if you will. And recently, I kind of addressed that in a paper I wrote. Stephen, you got a copy of that.
Yeah, it was very good. Very good.
What was your overall take on my conclusions?
I think your conclusions were solidly put. And, I think when we use these loose terms like the intelligence agencies, or we use loose terms like the Justice Department or the FBI, there used to be some prestige to that, as though those agencies and those individuals, at least at the top, had our best interest in mind. And I think what we found out over the last 15 to 20 years is that there are some bad apples in there that certainly don't have our best interests in mind. When you look at some of the issues at the Justice Department, the FBI, some of the intelligence failures, and then you look at some of these people running these various departments in the intel agencies, is they're not really the types of people you would have found in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They're very ideological, and they have an agenda. So that scares me. So the idea that these lapses happen, I think, are not surprising. And again, I don't look at it as coincidental. I really worry that we have bad actors in all aspects of government that are actively working against us for an agenda that we might not even know about. Now, with regards to your paper, Don, I love that paper because what it does is it really encapsulates, I think, the broadness of your interaction in this field as it relates to disclosure and what's going on. I think it establishes that we have seen this before. And just like we talked about international relations, it's what's going on in world events. If people don't know their history, they get very excited about what they see on the front page of the New York Times. And one of the issues that I have with this subject, especially as it is now, is the idea that the UFO issue started in 2017 with the Nimitz sighting on the cover of the New York Times. That's when you watch Congress and you watch these hearings, they're acting as though that is like day one of this phenomena, when in reality, there's far better cases, far better evidence that nobody will even bring up. What I would like to see happen is I would like to see someone take, Bob Jacobs in there and sit him down. He was an airman that watched that Atlas rocket as an optics guy, watched the launch of the Atlas rocket, and literally on the film that he filmed, that he testified to, that he said a flying saucer, literally a flying disc, flew above this warhead on a massive, they're zoomed in on this warhead, so it looks like this, and going. There's no question that this is high definition footage, and it got shot with a bunch of beams and fell out of the sky. And his major brought him in. The guy, his name was Mansman. Major Mansman brought Jacobs in, and he goes, "Jacobs, watch this film." And they watched the film together, and you see the Atlas rocket zoomed in with a massive lens taking off, and all of a sudden this thing flies into frame, according to Jacobs, shoots a bunch of lasers at it or something, and it just explodes and falls out of the sky. And Mansman looks at the guy and says, "What the hell was that?" And he goes, "Sir, I think that was a UFO." And according to Jacobs, the incident was reported. Someone came in, sees those tapes immediately, and says, "Don't talk about this." Now that could be one person's testimony, but then you've got Major Mansman. If you read the book from Richard Dolan about UFOs in the national security state, Mansman has wrote a letter that says, yes, that story as described is accurate. I was there. I saw the film. He's being honest. So rather than go up in front of Congress and talk about biologics and these little pieces of metal that they found that are being tested with how put off, I would petition everybody sitting there to look. I want to see the Jacobs tape. Let's watch that. Where is that? Let's put them in front of Congress, because that's not an abstract little blip on a black and white radar that's moving around. These are real people that are still alive, that have testified to this openly on Larry King and other places. But yet we have to sit here and listen as though the UFO topic started with a really bad black and white FLIR footage of who the hell knows what that thing is. And that's what bothers me, is everyone. So it seems like a massive distraction as opposed to a legitimate inquiry into what's happening.
Our nuclear bases being invaded by these unknown objects, shutting down literally an entire flight of ICBM missiles.
And Don, if you were to tell this to the average person that just goes about their day, they will look at you like you're crazy. But these cases are documented within government, in writing. This is not just, the farmer in the field that says, after a bunch of moonshine, he saw the UFO fly above his barn. I mean, these are real events. These happen. They have a paper trail. They have witnesses. These witnesses have put their names to paper and signed it. And if we're really going to have a discussion about this at Capitol Hill, I want to start there. I want to start with those cases, not these blips that they keep showing, that Corbell will show, the triangles that look like the aperture on the night vision creates the shape of the object. And each one of those objects had FAA compliant landing lights. So I'm pretty sure that the flying discs from, supposedly who knows where, know about our FAA compliance regulations and put, strobe lights on their things. Those were clearly aircraft. They look triangular because the aperture, I'm a camera guy, the aperture of the camera is triangular. And when you zoom in on it, that's what happens. They take the shape of the aperture of the lens. And Ben Hansen, who's the former FBI guy who did the show Fact or Faked, I've met him. He's a good guy. He's a true believer. However, he went out there with the same optics that they used on that battleship and pointed it at a bunch of commercial airplanes. And guess what? Every one of them looked like flying pyramids, because because they're flying pyramids. It's because of the way the lens system interacts with the light. That's all it is. And yet that case has been pushed so heavily. It was on every TV show, and it just makes you wonder. Why was that the golden goose, so to speak?
Smoke and mirrors, Stephen.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And people need to know their history. I'd rather talk about the cases, the Malmstrom incident. Let's talk about Rendlesham. Let's talk about the Jacobs and the Atlas missile being shot down. Let's talk about some of the documents that came out of the USSR that you allude to in your paper. I think if you want to have a serious conversation, you have to start at the beginning. And there's a lot of good data out there. And to your point that you mentioned at the top of the show is that the government's been involved in this topic for a very, very long time at every level, at every step of the way. They have used it to disinform. They have investigated it covertly. They have said it doesn't exist while they actually have massive investigations behind the scenes. All of this is in FOIA documents. It all exists, but it just shows you that, Santa Claus clearly isn't real, right? He's not a real thing. If you listen to the government talk about this, at least until recently, they'll tell you that this is not a real phenomenon. It's misidentified birds, it's swamp gas, it's viewer error, et cetera, et cetera. Fair enough, but then, why are they so hell-bent on spending all this money, time, and effort over 50, 60, 70 years to investigate it? There's no files in FOIA on Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. Those are two fictitious things we all can agree on. But at the same time, the government would have you believe that there's nothing to this until recently. And I think I'm a little bit skeptical to see all of this mainstream support, both politically and commercially, on a topic that previously they all said wasn't real. And nobody's asked that question.
Well, going back now, somebody that had extensive research into this topic was a fellow by the name of Gary Beckham. Did you know Gary, Stephen?
Only from your show.
Okay. All right. Now, Beckham called himself a rogue journalist, but he basically had an in with some of the names that practically anybody in this field would recognize as being former government physicists, government scientists, people like Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, and others. Now, he wrote a series of books. One book that he broke away. He had a website with, at the time, just massive amounts of information. He was doing FOIA requests. He was talking to various point people in various agencies. The guy really did a bang-up job. He had one that he was enamored with a fellow by the name of, a remote viewer. Anybody that knows anything about remote viewing will recognize this name because he was the guy that designed the protocols for the remote viewing program, a guy that I knew personally. And it was called To the Moon and Back with Love. Now, what basically this book was about, a lot of it wrapped around this guy's remote viewing. He was contacted he didn't even know until the day he died who these people were. Obviously, they were, at least on the surface, intelligence, deeply embedded intelligence people. And, by the way, I guess I didn't even mention his name, Ingo Swann. Okay, I'm sorry. I kind of got off in the storyland here. But Ingo Swann had been contacted by this group of some type of intelligence contacts. Later, he told me, we had met for a dinner out here in California in Burbank at an Italian restaurant, 4.5, 5 hours long. I'll never forget that evening. And we talked extensively because at that time I was involved very deeply in doing lunar research, okay, lunar transient phenomenon. And Ingo's book that he wrote, his book was titled Penetration. And it basically detailed his time at Stanford Research Institute, where he was showing his skills, and the guy was scary, okay? He was truly scary. For those that don't believe in the idea of a psychic ability or a psychic talent, spending an evening with this man, and I think your ideas would be changed. But basically, this group had him remotely view what ended up being the far side of the moon, the side of the moon that never faces the planet Earth. And he basically discovered what could only be a base there. Now, later on during the Apollo missions, I am sure, although they of course would never talk about it, NASA got probably a ton of photographs from that. And later in 94, when NASA and the Ballistic Missile Command sent the Clementine mission up there to completely remap and rephotograph the moon to the tune of 2.5 million photographs from our highest photography available, spy satellite stuff like the KH-11 that could photograph a pack of cigarettes, for God's sakes, from 2,000 miles up. Okay, that's how good this stuff was. How many of those 2.5 million photographs have ever been released? None of them. I am convinced, and I said this in my paper that Stephen mentioned, that they went back. There's only one reason why you go back to a place that you've already been to and then completely do a reconnaissance on it again to see what the hell has changed. Okay. I watched it all the time in Vietnam. All right. We would have recon aircraft go out, find something of interest, photograph the hell out of it, later on come back and see what's different about this site. More buildings, new technology there, radar, tanks, trucks, who knows, okay? But what has changed? Well, the only reason I can see, Stephen, that they would have gone back to the moon in 94 was for exactly the same difference. Let's see what might have changed since 1972. 72 was the last time we were at the moon. Apollo 17, that was it. Okay, December, we came home and suddenly we tucked our wings under our arms and we didn't go back out except for near-Earth orbiting stuff like Skylab and eventually the shuttle. But I couldn't understand why they would go back to the moon and do that unless
I always wondered if there was something to what Arthur C. Clarke talked about, Don. because he mentions in his book 2010, you can go anywhere, but don't approach EO. And I always wondered if we got a warning. Just wondered.
I think we did get a warning about the moon. And that's why I was so interested and so curious when both China and India went to the moon. Okay? Japan has been trying desperately to get to the moon.
And what China.
Yeah, and what may or may not happen. I mean, look, the Chinese put rovers on the far side of the moon. They called it the Jade Rabbit. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Okay. And what have they released? Have they released anything?
No, not much.
Now, when I first heard that, I thought it was a sex toy. It was just weird.
The moon is a very anomalous object out there. I know that there's 2 PhDs in Russia that wrote a pretty extensive paper several years back that makes the argument. And again, this isn't my cup of tea, but these are very educated people that understand this stuff. And their conclusion was that the moon most likely is artificial and was put into orbit for some specific reason. And if you look at the importance that the moon has on the Earth, the tidal locks, and the interplay that the moon has in the Earth's functionality, it is, life came from the oceans, right? We came out of the oceans. And then you've got what controls the ocean is the moon. So it almost seems as though if you're going to want to populate a sphere like Earth, and it requires tides in these natural interplays, and you need some sort of thing with a gravitational pull that just shouldn't be there but is. It's very interesting. The moon is a very interesting thing. To this day, it like Don, it interests me. I don't necessarily believe it's artificial or it's a spaceship, but there's a lot of very intelligent people that look at this and they'll make the argument that thing actually shouldn't be there. And it's very, very strange. And then you understand that the government's interest in it over the years has been pretty deep. It makes you wonder, right? Go photograph it a few times, land up there, look at the dead rocks or whatever, bring a few back, and that's it. Why do a remote viewing program at the highest classified level and task these people with looking at this thing on the dark side of the moon if there's nothing there,
Well, apparently there are some rather large hollow areas
right
under the lunar surface.
They did a test where they did something to the moon. They said it rang like a bell. That was the quote from the NASA research paper. They said the moon rang like a bell as though it's hollow. I think they've since walked that back because they realize how strange that sounds.
Well, there are a lot of things that if you hit them right at the right time, they'll do the same thing. That's why it's not confirmation, but the fact that there could be caverns in the moon is absolutely plausible.
Right, and if you're dealing with, let's just do a little bit of a mind experiment. Experiment. If you're dealing with high technology and intelligence that can do things, why would they be on the surface anyway? That doesn't make sense. So especially if they want to be clandestine and they don't want to be discovered, you're not going to expect to see them with massive things, on the visible surface. Most of the stuff, you'd do the same thing, Don, you'd go underground, right? That's why our secret military bases, most of them are underground or built into the side of mountains and well fortified. It's
so
not
they can't be super, observed.
Right, and that's just us as like primitive humans relative to, let's assume there's an advanced civilization. So to me, I think it's funny to think that you're just going to go look at some of these planets and expect to see, a mall or something just hanging out there. I think, a lot of this stuff, if it exists, is going to be under the surface, in the oceans, underground. And I think we're just now beginning to understand that with some of the stuff that's coming out on the USO. So that's what's unidentified submersible objects. These are things that the Navy has been seeing in the skies, and then they're also seeing a lot of strange stuff underwater. So, and it makes sense. I mean, you
and that belief of the supposed UFO base off of San Diego.
Yeah, and Catalina Island is another hotspot supposedly, which is it's all very interesting to me. they had that thing that looked like the Millennium Falcon that was found under the water, and
Baltic Sea, yeah.
the Baltic Sea, and that story was everywhere, and then it just got shut down. You can't find anything about it anymore. It's all sort of been wiped from the internet, other than just the kind of surface story about what it looked like, and the guys went over it, and it was weird.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should mention that, because believe it or not, today I was up early, like I usually am, having a cup of coffee, going through my cell phone, and was playing some reels on Facebook. Okay, they had something on there about the Baltic Sea object, whatever that thing is. And I learned something today I was not aware of. They claimed that a number of different groups, and I'm presuming they're different nationalities or something, sent some highly sensitive robotic submersibles down to that thing.
And didn't they fail?
Yeah. And the reason they failed, according to this reel, was because it gave off strange electronic and magnetic effects.
Yes, they lost communication. What I read is they had a tough time with communications when they got close to it. And again, you have to dig deep to even find that. I read that initially because I think the group that originally found it went back for a closer inspection, and they brought more sophisticated equipment. And according to them, it all just went haywire. And they were going to work on a documentary about it. And that, again, it just all fell off the radar. Like, who got to them? Who paid them off? Like, why isn't this a story anymore? Even if it's a non-story, it's still an interesting story. Let's just go look at it and see that it's a pile of rocks. Like, why can't we do that? We have the technology to go down there.
We have the technology to go off the coast and go look at these things, and nobody's doing it that we're aware of.
I agree.
And going back to the moon, I want to point out that everybody knows that there's tritium, hydrogen-3, on the moon. And it could be in large abundance there. And that's the one thing that I know that China's trying to do, to corner the market on it from the moon. And we can't let them do that. We have to fight them for, our economy, our own economy. We got to protect
you have to do it just from a military advantage.
Military point too.
It's the high ground, so to speak. I mean, if you can establish, and this is why, I don't know, perhaps the moon's so off limits, but really, if you wanted to have a real capability to get to Mars, if you really wanted to have sort of a headquarters to initiate anything, it would be from the moon. And it's strategically, it makes sense, but yet we don't really do much with it anymore. And no one else has seemed to have been able to get back. So it is very interesting that the moon is there.
Have you heard much about the Jade Bunny and some of the other stuff they put on the moon?
It died recently is what I read. I think it just...
Yeah, I saw that died. I still want to go back to that threat. Was there a threat, and that's why we never went back to the moon? Because it is such a great resource.
That's been the rumors since the end of Apollo. All right. George Leonard, in his seminal book, which disappeared practically as quickly as it was produced, Somebody Else Is on the Moon, alluded to that. Now, in my paper, and we still have a couple of minutes before we gotta stop for the break. But in my paper, I talked about the lunar special that I was the research producer on, that came out in 2014 on the Sci-Fi Channel. And the big coup of that show was the fact that the producers were able to secure and get on camera Buzz Aldrin, the second American human being, man, that stepped out on the moon after Armstrong. Now, imagine you are in that elevated milieu. At this point, there had only been 2 human beings on the moon. You were one of them. You would think that you would have stories to tell about that. Well, my shock and surprise was when I had taken a number of lunar photographs. I had found one that was shocking from a NASA source. This was not something I shot through my Celestron telescope. This had been an actual NASA photograph. And they were placed in front of Buzz Aldrin to talk about. And his reaction will stick with me from that day to this one. He violently tore his head away, refused to look at any of the lunar photographs, refused to talk about him going to the moon. The only thing that man would talk about was Mars and the Phobos obelisk, or whatever the hell that thing is. Okay. I was shocked. And I've told a lot of people that. Nobody has really, I haven't got a hell of a lot of comments about it. And now we're going to have to wait for your comments until after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dark Matters Radio, brought to you exclusively on KGRA DB right here, and we'll be back with a lot more.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
Are you looking to go on a faraway journey that is magical and mysterious, reaping on mystical legends? If so, then Mysterious Adventure Tours is perfect for you. Imagine a voyage to explore ancient mysteries of Ireland, haunted majesties of Scotland, or their chilling Birth of the Vampires in Romania. These small esoteric getaways are limited and do fill up fast. So, go to MysteriousAdventureTours.com and book your trip soon.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
Hey, we're back.
I like that music.
Back. Okay, do you guys, Stephen, do you got any thoughts about what I said about Buzz Aldrin? I never in my life saw a reaction from someone that I would have never, ever, 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 ever suspected.
Well, you know, it's not just Buzz Aldrin that has made some very cryptic statements about the moon. It was also Neil Armstrong and then also Edgar Mitchell. I remember Art being on Art Bell And Art Bell asked him to just tell me what it's like on the moon. Like, that had to be amazing. And he said, to be honest, I don't really remember. It was like just such a strange experience. He really couldn't put into words very much.
Which one said they were being observed?
That one, I'm not sure.
Allegedly, that was Neil Armstrong.
But the interesting thing about Mitchell is he really just sort of didn't really have words for what he experienced, you know? And that was something that if you listen to a lot of Art Bell, he always would mention on the show, is that how he could not get any real detail from Edgar Mitchell about.
Can I put my tinfoil hat on for a minute?
Sure.
With that silver hell, will we be able to notice?
Yeah, you should. This is basically my suspicion that every one of those guys had their mind taken out and cleaned before they turned them loose back into public.
Well, when you
know that they were kept from the public for a while.
Yeah, they had to decontaminate for several days, and then you watch that first press conference.
Weeks.
It's crazy. It doesn't need to be that long.
You watch that first press conference where they had to address the press, where they looked terrified and nervous.
They looked like they were drugged out, dude.
It's the strangest thing. That video, that footage, whatever it is just it's. You can show that to anybody, whether they're a believer, non-believer, if they know even that those are astronauts, and they would watch that and would say, "What's wrong with those guys?" I mean, absolutely. A child could be like, "Those people look traumatized. There's something wrong with those people," and that always stuck with me. Now, what that means, I don't know. I have no idea. But to Don's point, and we've seen this before in this topic, that a lot of these people are what they would call. Messed with to some extent. They get debriefed. Let's put it that way. And I think there's levels of that. I mean, even if you listen to the Rendlesham witnesses, they all went through some harrowing debriefings that basically, when you think about it, it's basically a mind control. They were messed with. And I think that's why you see so many inconsistencies in that specific case. Because I think a lot of those guys, a lot of those principal witnesses were messed with badly. And I think that's something that the government does, especially when they have an ability to interact with the witnesses. Like if they are soldiers or they are somebody, they can certainly, do this. We've seen MK Ultra. All this information's out there. This is not tinfoil hat stuff. The government understands how to do this. They've written books called Mind Wars. They understand how to break down a person. And the reality is that we've seen instances of this involving this topic over and over and over again, tremendously.
And just that we know for a fact that MK Ultra existed proves they can do it.
Right.
But let's look back 14 years ago, because I shared the video in private of Buzz Aldrin back on C-SPAN. And he starts talking about a monolith on the moon on Mars. Or was it Phobos too?
Phobos.
Phobos. And said that there's a monolith there. It's a real monolith, and that freaked me out. Hearing him say that, because I admire and just love Buzz Aldrin, and to hear him say that, kind of like, what are they keeping from us?
Let's look real quickly at those guys. The first Apollo mission, Apollo 11. What happened to them? Armstrong came back. He became a recluse. Okay, recluse. Aldrin came back. He became a drunk. Okay, full-blown alcohol addiction. Collins came back, slipped into obscurity. Never heard nothing from him, nothing. All right, now, these guys were arguably the greatest heroes in human history.
Right.
Okay, these were the guys that reached down into their pants pockets. They gave their gonads a tweak. They went to the moon. They landed on the moon. They were on the moon. They got back in their spaceship, and they all came home.
With no more technology, by the way, than you would find in a 10-key calculator.
Yes. That's true. And the bottom line is something obviously happened to them more than a simple trip up and back. Now, hey, you don't have to be Albert Einstein to figure that out. Simply by the way they acted and reacted. Buzz knocked that guy out half his age that claimed he didn't go to the moon. You're a liar. Pow.
I have a copy of that video because every once in a while I just like to break it out and watch him do that.
He did it. He did a number on him. And then Don, I
called
think
him a coward, and that was the bridge too far.
I think also, Don, is that you have to look at this topic that we're talking about now and how it relates to your interview with Vito Sakari and the journey that person went through.
My God.
And I know this is getting very, very deep into the weeds. And this is why I like Don. This is why I always preferred his show and his style, because he would always bring out these individuals that not everybody has heard of if they've studied this subject or read the typical books that you find, or just even the websites. And that Don did an interview, I think maybe in the late 80s, early 90s.
November of 95.
Okay, 95. Yeah, this guy's story is unbelievable, frankly. And if you've even spent 2 minutes on Earth and interacted with another person, you can tell he's being honest. This is an honest guy telling you a story as it happened, very little embellishments, and it's riveting. And this guy essentially says that he and a gentleman went down to NASA to try to look at these pictures that he felt were in the public domain because NASA's publicly funded. So he felt these are my pictures as much as they are yours. And he was kind of a pit bull onto this. And he went all the way up and basically ended up looking at some pictures, and it was shocked that what he saw were what he could only describe as large machines on the moon in crisp, perfect detail. And he was so terrified at the ramifications, he just wanted to get out of there. He wanted to get out of there. Now, the naysayers, like somebody like Jim Oberg, will discredit his entire story because his description of the NASA campus is not accurate. And that building would have been on the left-hand side and not on the right-hand side. And as far as Oberg knows, there was no door to the right. Like, okay, maybe not. But this guy, this is his first time ever being on the NASA campus. He's not as nearly familiar with it as Oberg. So maybe he got the location of the door wrong or thought he went into building A when he went into building B. I mean, I've been on a college campus. I was there for 4 years. It took me 2 years to know where the hell I was half the time. I had to look at a little map to even find some new building that's that big. NASA campus, you couldn't ever expect me to describe that campus in any great detail and get it accurate. But that's what Oberg says. Oberg doesn't take on the facts or the things that he says. He just says, well, he clearly wasn't where he says he was because there is no. Well, that would
screw up his narrative, Stephen.
You're right. I mean, his objections to that is so trivial when you listen to them. Oh, his description of the building is inaccurate. I don't believe that there was a building where he says there was. Okay, maybe he came in a different gate and he thought that was the main gate and it wasn't. I mean, then that would just turn all the buildings around. Give the guy a break. He didn't spend 20 years working on that campus like Oberg did. The guy literally went there 1 or 2 times. And I'm
going to have to get that show out, dust it off.
Yeah, you should. It's really good.
Edit it a little bit and play it on this broadcast because if I was told once, and this is no exaggeration, I probably have been told by 1,500 different people that was the greatest radio show about phenomena they ever heard in their lives.
I agree. It's very riveting. And you can let somebody that has zero interest in this topic or any of these topics listen to that, and it's riveting. And the guy, the Vito guy is just. He's just a guy. You hear him. He's just an average guy who got pulled into this, and he's telling it to you as he remembers it. There's no embellishment. Most people, when they make up a story like this, they put themselves in the center as the hero. And this guy didn't do that. He just told a story, and that's exactly what
he was. A petroleum engineer.
Yeah, petrochemical engineer that he had a colleague that had the book. That literally came to him on this job because he didn't really want to do the job there. He really just wanted to go to NASA because he was enamored with this book, and pulled Vito along there because Vito was from the U.S. and this guy was from Venezuela or something. And Vito was just like, I didn't know what the hell this was. I read the book, thought it was interesting, so I drove him over there. And that started the journey. I mean, this was not like him making himself the hero and trying to.
And NASA did everything they could do to scare him off.
Yes.
At one point, they even threatened him with the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
If you can believe that.
No, I do. I believe the guy. Like, again, I don't know what it means, but, and there's no telling what they showed him. Like, maybe it was, fake pictures just to scare him. I don't know. I'm not saying there were machines, but I'm saying his account of the events is true as far as he knows it. And that's kind of where I come down on other people like Bob Lazar. Now, did Bob Lazar see an alien spacecraft that could fly to Mars? I have no idea. But I'm telling you, when that guy says what he says, I believe that in his mind, as he knows it, that's what happened. Now, whether or not that's aliens from another planet, that's just my point of view, because I think I have a good BS detector. And, I think he was used in a lot of ways to sort of disinform, unknowingly or unknowingly. I think he was used. And I hear him tell the story, and I'm like, that's a believable guy to me. When I hear other people tell stories, like Dan Burrish, for example, not a believable guy. Not a believable guy. And others. Or Guy Kirkwood, right, Don? That guy, not believable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when you start listening to Phil Imbrogno with a pretty close lens, you realize this guy's full of it, totally full of it. And they're out there, but some people, their stories just resonate true. Yeah, they could be the best liars, but that's possible. That's possible.
Well, this is a field that, unfortunately, there is no postgraduate school you can go to for it. This is basically an OJT type of thing. I was lucky because of my background in investigation and law enforcement. Okay, that's basically where I started from. Did I have an interest in it? Yeah, of course. After those cattle mutilations, I was called upon to investigate when I was a cop. But then when it all started to come together, for me, about roughly, not quite 10 years later, it was suddenly I had an oh shit moment,
Sure.
And from that point, I very naively assumed back then, and I'm talking basically 35 years ago, with just the right case, with just the right witnesses, with just the right investigation, I can break this open. Boy, was I dumb.
Yeah, and I don't think you're the only one that has gone down that road. At least for me, it has never been that kind of a journey. I just find it fascinating. I think it's mind expanding to think about this stuff as opposed to watching reality TV and so forth. And the topic, I think, has so many twists and turns. You can make with it what you will. So if you want to study the more global impact, the secrecy, the national security components, if you want to get out into la la land and start reading about contactees or abductees or Pleiadians, I mean, it's all out there. It's a very fascinating field, and it's always interested me at every level. Still don't know where I come down on a lot of it, but I still have a vast active interest in it. And
I'll tell you one thing about this, and it can be a dangerous field. And yeah. I don't mean dangerous physically necessarily.
Correct.
Mentally. I have seen people travel right off the edge.
Sure.
With this stuff.
Look at John Lear. I mean, that was a guy.
Clifford Stone is another one.
Clifford Stone, John Lear, his first foray into the mainstream ufology was pretty buttoned up. He had a great reputation. He went on George Knapp. I mean, sure, he spoke clearly, and he just relayed information that people relayed to him. Didn't necessarily endorse a lot of it, but by the end, the guy thought there were shopping centers and population centers on the moon, and there was a full atmosphere with blue skies and beaches, and I mean, you can point a telescope up in the moon and see that's not it's no atmosphere.
Well, this stuff is so crazy. And for example, I shared in the private chat there. I watch a lot of military veteran programs, including I'm a big follower of former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan's channel.
I love it. Love it.
He had that lunatic. And I told Don, I said, my bullshit detector was going off when he had Dr. Stephen Greer. And I'm like, nothing he is saying sounds believable. Nothing.
No, he's another one that, once again, and it makes you wonder if these people have been compromised or messed with. But when Stephen Greer first came onto the scene, he was a lot different than he is now. Now, if you listen to him talk, he'll tell you that he was an abductee at a small age and had an encounter, and all this crazy stuff happens. And none of that was part of the narrative when he first came onto the scene. I will tell you that when you talk about the Navy SEAL Sean Ryan, Don, if you don't know who he is, he's a Navy SEAL that brings on a lot of different veterans, and he talks to them about
religious Christian too.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and he talks about various operations that happened throughout history, whether it's Black Hawk Down or Mogadishu.
He has the actual guys on,
right? The literal guys, and the special forces operators typically. But he did a thing recently called the Whistleblower Series, and in this series, I don't know if you've seen this, Gary. He brought on 3 guys that testified before Congress.
Yes, I did. This is great stuff.
That talked about their experiences in the military with technology that they really could not explain. And I thought the first guy that he interviewed had the most interesting and believable story, because you could just tell this guy was sweating bullets even relaying the story. And in short, he was part of an army group that was sent to Thailand after the massive earthquakes as part of a humanitarian mission to support the locals on the ground that were trying to, save people and so forth. Because he said there was a lot of factions, a lot of gangs, a lot of people were stealing. So the U.S. sent a group over there, basically just for protection. And they went down this hill, him and his 4 other mates or whatnot, and they get to the bottom of this clearing. They just see what he describes as a triangular black, almost not visible, so black you can barely see it.
I watched this one that you're talking about, and it gave me chills.
And he says it gave me chills. It's spinning, and underneath, and there's trucks parked all around it, unmarked military trucks. And he and his guys are looking at this thing sitting there, and they're in awe. So they realize they want to go down closer and look at it. And he says underneath it is a platform. And the platform is not attached in any way to the larger structure that's spinning. Let's just call it the craft. And he and his guys are looking at this, and he's like, none of this makes sense. And as he gets down there, and these are trained military guys. This is a real guy. Like Sean Ryan, he's a Navy SEAL. He doesn't bring on guys that are not vetted. He doesn't bring on fakes and phonies. I mean, he understands the nomenclature. He understands the people that he's interviewing are legitimate. And these guys,
he has a pretty good bullshit detector himself.
Oh, he does too. And he didn't seem to be having a problem with this. And when these Army guys get down there, he goes, suddenly and without notice, we are surrounded by what looks like private military personnel that speak English with guns pointed at them. He says they immediately disarmed us, asked us what the hell we're doing there. And he goes, these guys are smooth. He's like, they took our magazines out. He's like, they put them back in upside down. They tied our rifle so tight back that there'd be no way that we could ever, get it around it and then get the magazine. They're basically, and then, they took, he said they had some sort of device. They copied all of their military ID. He's like, it was clear to them that this is not the first time this private military group that was assisting in this operation with this craft had done something like this. And he says at some point the craft lifted off and just hovered out over and it was gone. And that's the story. You can put that what you will, but I think the argument here is that I think it just shows that our military has technology that is so far beyond what, we think. And unfortunately, his point is he thought that what they were moving out of that area was not, goods and container, but rather humans. He thought this was part of human trafficking. He says because what was being loaded into that craft were RV-sized containers with some sort of oxygen AC kind of thing. So he thinks that those containers were full of people. He thought,
well, that's it. And you're talking about Michael Herrera, by the way.
Yes, that's his name. Correct.
Herrera is just his story. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to get the visual.
These containers, these things were human trafficking.
Yeah. Off planet or in planet, maybe, through some, who knows. some dark forces like we talked about. But I'll tell you what, this guy, Don, as he's relaying this story, he's sweating bullets. He's not comfortable telling this. And he literally says, he goes, I have social phobia. He's like, I don't do public speaking. I don't do events. I get nervous. So it's funny, somebody that would have a social phobia that doesn't do public speaking, that literally has panic attacks doing something like this, is not in their free time going to come up with a hoax that's going to require them to go on a national show and talk about something like this in front of 1 million people. And you could tell this guy was not comfortable giving this interview. So really fascinating link. I'll send it to you if your viewers want to watch it. It's out there. Navy SEAL Sean Ryan. Google it. Go to the part called the Whistleblower series. Really fascinating stuff.
That was the name of my series in UFO Magazine when I was doing a series of exposés on some of the crackpots in the field back in the early 90s.
And Sean had him on, and I think he was buying too much of Greer's bullshit. That bothered me because.
Well, the problem is you get a little bit, unless you do your research and say, oh God, this guy was a medical doctor. He ran the ER in North Carolina. He's
got an amazing record, but the guy is very cultish in his behavior.
Right after he surfaced, and this would have been about 90 or 91, okay? He called Vicky and I at UFO Magazine, wanted to meet us for lunch and talk about UFOs. So he told us who he was, Dr. Stephen Greer, etc. Okay, so we met him downtown, and it became obvious to me almost immediately this guy had his sights set on becoming a guru, a UFO guru. And why? I mean, the guy was an MD, for God's sake. Why? What about that? It didn't make any sense to me. But then I had just completed an article which had already run in the magazine about people that had been seriously injured or even killed coming into contact with UFOs. And
see, they keep that away from the public. That's just something that, like you had told me previously about that cattle mutilations were the only thing that it was different animals, but also humans were mutilated.
Right. And Greer got all huffy about that. He was convinced that this is the mantra. They're here for our benefit. They're here for our benefit.
Right.
And I said, but Stephen, if any of these stories are about abductions are true, would our friends come in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, without an invitation, abduct you out of your bed, allegedly take you on board a craft of some kind and perform experiments on you? I mean, no.
Friends don't do that.
No.
But by the way, in the private chat there, I put the whistleblower episode with Michael Herrera. That's the link right there.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot.
I did too.
Don, you'd get a lot out of that as
it's so cool that you watch him too. I love Sean Ryan.
Me too. Yeah, I watch him all the time. I watch him all the time. Very good show he has there. Good guy. Yeah, Don, that's a good one to watch.
When he has guys from Benghazi or Black Hawk Down or Mogadishu. I love to watch those guys talk about the real shit.
Yeah, the guy on that shot Bin Laden, shot him 3 times in the face.
Yeah.
Good guy. What a patriot.
What's his name? Chris? No, not Chris. I forget his name. But I know
and then if you really want to look, the most fascinating one he did was his interview with the Navy SEAL Chris Beck. It's like 6 hours long. That was the Navy SEAL that transitioned into being a woman and realized that he had been messed with by the.
He came back as a man.
Came back and realized that they totally effed him over. They basically, the Navy preyed on his trauma to make him the poster child of this transition thing. And the guy is just his naval career as a Navy SEAL is the most impressive thing.
Even his stories are scary.
Well, even Sean Ryan, who's a Navy SEAL, he's listening to another Navy SEAL, and he's like, "You did that? Wait, you designed that? You built that? You went there? You worked with that?" I mean, his own mind was blown. As a Navy SEAL, the top tier operator is listening to another guy just blow his mind about his accolades and the things that he did in the service. A real fascinating interview. I love it. I love that one. But yeah, great.
And I do want to tell you, my own personal experience working in the medical field, running into anything like that the first time was these were Vietnam veterans, by the way, SOF, transitioning.
Yeah.
At the VA. And I was just like really thrown back by that at first. I mean, it didn't bother me on a personal level.
No,
I was
but
just shocked.
It seemed like if you listen to him, it seems like they were being exploited for, once again, an agenda.
And I've wondered about that.
Well, that's where we get back to when we talk about these, the bad actors that we have in these agencies. You would think you hear the word again, when you don't put a name to it and you say things like the VA, you just assume, this is
they're all benign,
an advocate for veterans, but you don't realize there's some bad apples in a lot of these agencies everywhere.
Out there for their own benefits,
100%,
to push
100%.
forward agendas.
Yep.
Absolutely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I never like that when people just say, the national security state or the government. Well, who is that? Who are we talking about specifically? Because it's too vague.
It's
too vague. Let's talk about who's in government and what do they do and what is their agenda, because they all have competing agendas. So, the government would never do that. What do you mean the government? No one thinks deeply. They don't understand. They just speak in these vague terms. And we've all been.
The government itself is nothing. It's nothing. It has no money. It's nothing. It's the people that work within it that you have to worry about.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So again, it's a complicated subject, but I think a lot of it crosses over into all of this. I mean, again, it comes down to the integrity of the people involved. And as we've seen in the UFO topic, that there's been a lot of this cover-up has been, because you had a lot of bad apples operating under an agenda. And, that agenda seems to morph as the years go on. And that's why I'm just very skeptical of what we're seeing right now in Congress with this.
Absolutely. Everything he came forward for, this whistleblower.
Yeah.
There's nothing. He knows nothing. He's done nothing.
It's all, I will say though, again, I look, when I listened to him testify, it was salacious. The stuff he said was great, but it was all secondhand.
All secondhand. But I did read, again, you're not going to find this in the U.S. press. I think it was the UK Times. I wish I had the link. If I had it, I would post it. But it was a follow-up to his testimony where apparently he handed over a list of names of people that he heard this from. He did disclose that. And over 30 different people across, and the article said that work specifically in these programs, not secondhand, have verified the things that he said. So that was an interesting thing out of that. And also, I will tell you the way that the government went and discredited him almost immediately because he thought he sought out some psychiatric treatment because of his PTSD. They released that, which, come on, you can't release people's medical issues, but they did. And it makes you wonder, why would they do that? It's against the Constitution to do that.
So they went after him personally and said, okay, this guy was once institutionalized for mental illness. Well, guess what? I don't like to fly on airplanes. Hate it. So I have a prescription for Xanax for when I go on an airplane. I get on my chart now, it says mental illness. There's no mental illness. I take a Xanax. I don't want to freaking have nervousness on the plane. That's it. No mental illness. No, but these words have been so stigmatized. So unless you understand why someone sought out the treatment they did, it's massivily different.
Well, it's weaponizing mental illness.
Yeah, it's a stigmatized word. You don't know why he went in and why he did that. I personally don't like to fly in airplanes. I get super nervous. Take half a Xanax, I go to sleep, I feel great, wonderful. Not mentally ill, but yet you read my chart, it says that I'm being treated for, I don't know if it says mental ill. It's just a very stigmatized word. And every time I see it on there, it's just freaking annoying to me. Like, general anxiety. I have no anxiety. I just don't want to fly on airplanes.
It's like my doctor reported on how I hate to fart in public.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't want that word on. I told her. I said I don't want that on my personal.
Well, it's wrong. No matter how you look at it, to make people's private stuff. Those medical records, by the way, aren't the property of anybody but you.
Agreed.
They're your medical
you need
records.
Context.
Nobody has a right to them.
If it just said that you gave me fentanyl, and there's no context, I just went in with a kidney stone. They gave me fentanyl. So yeah, technically I took fentanyl, but if you just put on there that he took fentanyl without the context, it was given to me by a medical doctor because I had a kidney stone. It's, again, context matters. And what they did to that guy is they threw him under the bus. They said, oh, he's been institutionalized or something. No, he went to the VA or something because he had some issues over whatever, big deal.
But this falls into the whole thing that Don's been talking about with the whole thing, because there'll never be disclosure. There'll never be full disclosure.
No.
I came to the same conclusion on my own that when they requested information from the CIA and Air Force, they declined to turn it over. I'm like, there you go. There's your answer. There will never be full disclosure.
Right.
But Don's is far more invasive. It gets in there and explains why there will be no disclosure.
Well, they've also set up a system to where, and Don knows about this, is something that Rich talked about a lot, Rich Saraday, is that they've set up a system where they're almost at a distance where you really can't task them with disclosure because they're not really directly involved with what's happening. It's all being privatized through subcontractors, which are run by former defense intelligence officials that have ties to the government. So what they've basically done is they've set up a quasi-government in the private sector through these subcontractors, Boeing, Raytheon, and so forth, where in the heads of those are all former generals and defense contractors and people that are well connected to the government. And then it's no longer the people's property. It's proprietary to those private entities. So to try to go out there and get this information, and they still get U.S. tax dollars. They still get the money. So it's the same way, but they're not beholden to things like FOIA.
There is a core secret to the UFO phenomenon.
Right.
That is protected by an SAP, a special access program. And if you don't have a need to know, you're not on the bigot list, you'll never know. Hey,
yeah, you just talked about this last week, Don.
They booted a freaking admiral.
Correct.
And ass out of there.
Again, and that's why I think if we really want to have a serious conversation in Congress about this, we need to get Wilson and Davis in front of Congress, and let's have a real conversation about those memos.
Wilson would be bound by law to lie.
Well, then let's have them lie on television. And again,
that's the whole thing is you have to also confront them about all this secrecy.
Well, again, at least
who's controlling the secrecy? Well, let's talk about that. They won't.
No, they won't do that. And from my perspective, when you have someone like John Alexander, who will, in a very cavalier way, say that there's nothing to UFO secrecy within government because he, as a lieutenant colonel or colonel, did his best to talk to his colleagues in government and ask them if there was any secret programs that they knew about involving this technology, and they told him no. And his conclusion based on those conversations is, therefore, there can't be any UFO knowledge because they would have told me. But to Don's point, if it's a core secret and he's not read into the program, just like the Admiral or the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Admiral Wilson, they told him to F off when he went in there and says, I want oversight on this program that I know exists. And they said, we'll get back to you. And when they got back to him, they said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. You don't have a need to know. The same with John Alexander. If he doesn't have a need to know, that colleague, even if they're the best guys, even if they've served together, he's not going to disclose anything. So his conclusions are just logically invalid because, to Don's point, he would never be told whether it was real or not, regardless of their relationship. Well, I know these people. They would tell me. Not necessarily. And there's secrets, believe me, that John Alexander has probably sworn an oath to. If those same guys asked him, he wouldn't tell them. So he's being
just
very...
Another example, though, Stephen, is the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, yeah.
Certain people, they'll tell you, there was no conspiracy. We know there was.
I think Trump just came out and says he didn't release anything on there, even though he was promised to. He says because it would shock people too badly if they knew what was in those papers.
No.
Well, yeah, it's going to tell you again.
You lose your trust in government.
No, it's going to right, exactly right at a time when that's like already at an all-time low.
It's teetering now.
It's teetering now, and it has been for a while. But again, to go back to the bad apples in government, I mean that's a situation where absolutely factions of the U.S. government conspired to kill the U.S. president. I believe that now. I think the basic facts will lay that out. I think it's well supported. Even if you support the lone gunman, Well, who was the lone gunman? A guy with deep ties to our intelligence and so forth. So that lone gunman was just not some crazy postal employee down the street that just had an issue with the president. He was deeply integrated into a variety of programs and was equally complicit in working as a government agent. So even minimally, even if you take the minimal case and say, okay, it's a lone gunman, the lone gunman was heavily compromised by the intelligence agencies. So, even that doesn't stand up.
And what happened to the lone gunman?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where'd he go? But you got Robert Kennedy Jr. He's coming out saying stuff. It's like there's a vast
look what they've done to him.
Kill my uncle and my dad.
Look what they've done to him. They've made that guy a complete basket case. And if you read his academic pedigree, he's extremely intelligent. He's got Ivy League degrees. He's more than capable to drawing the conclusions he's drawn based on his own education in this field. And yet they treat him as though he's some crazy guy down on the street. He's a nut job,
right?
Yeah, which is
his party.
Which is so disingenuous. Most people, if you ask them and why they don't like him, oh, he's crazy. And then if you go look up his education on Wikipedia, you'll be shocked. Shocked.
He said something I don't like that makes him crazy.
Exactly. Well, that's everybody now. You have to agree to the narrative, or they're going to come for you, and that's not freedom. I don't care what anybody's belief is on any specific topic. I just believe in the right to believe that, unfettered, without any sort of censorship. And right now, you can't there's funny stuff. I can't find half the stuff on the internet that I could find 5-7 years ago. It doesn't exist on this topic and others. If you type in UFO right now, and I often thought about this, if you type in UFO anything, the only picture that comes up in Google Images is the Nimitz. It literally is the only, you can't find another UFO picture, video on YouTube. It's like almost like that thing was used just to wash the internet of anything else. Nothing. You can't find anything about you can find tidbits here and there if you have the right keywords, but just a general look at UFOs, just the Nimitz, just the New York Times, just Leslie Kean, just Fravor, Corbell, Nat, that's it. It's like this whole subject matter has been wiped from the internet from anything before 2017. And that could be by design.
Oh, without a doubt, it is.
Could be by design because
UFO magazine was published for over 20 years. And on several occasions, I went up there to see what was on the net about it. Almost nothing.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Don, I think I bought one of the largest collections of UFO magazines. I have, when I was researching my Norio documentary, I wanted those pictures that he published in UFO, that you published in UFO magazine, of that helicopter, that black helicopter chasing him. So the only way I could do that was to buy every issue on eBay. I think I have maybe 150 of them, 100, at least 100. And I found it. I do have it. But what was cool about this documentary is we were thrilled because Norio relays a story where he was out at Area 51 and he was literally chased by a black helicopter and run off the road, essentially almost run off the road. This thing was so low to the ground. And in researching this, I knew that Don ran pictures of that in UFO magazine. So I bought enough UFO magazines that I was able to find the actual episode. So I was able to scan in those pictures that Norio had taken of the helicopter flying above the car. But it's just a picture. It's not very dramatic. 2 days before we finished the documentary, we were doing some back and forth with some guy that runs a UFO clearinghouse of some kind, not all too different than the guy that used to call in a Video Dave. It wasn't Video Dave, but somebody with a similar collection. And 2 days before that, he goes, I actually have the raw footage of that helicopter chasing their car. And he gave it to us. So that's in the film. And it's chasing the car. I mean, it's low. Oh. It's exciting. I mean, you're looking at this thing and you're like, okay, is there just a helicopter? No. The helicopter is literally chasing him down the street. And it's insane. It's insane. And if you pay attention.
Where can you find this? Because I've never seen this.
It's in our film. I sent you the link. You can watch it.
Oh, I'm going to watch it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm watching it.
Yeah. And what's cool about it is if you pay attention to that footage and you look at the window, you can see how fast they're driving that car down that desert road. I mean, this is not a peaceful interaction between what is, I guess, base command and a civilian.
Was it unmarked, by the way?
It was unmarked, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And then as soon as they got to the road, there was a police, caravan waiting for them. So, and that
I don't know what's going on in Skinwalker Ranch, but they've been assaulted the last 3 times during investigations by unmarked black helicopters.
That's a fascinating show. Again, I don't know how much of it is for public consumption, but I will tell you that some of the stuff you watch on there is really interesting.
And scary.
Yeah, a little bit. It's I want to go hang out there. I know, Don, you tried to get the Skinwalker Ranch, but Knapp wouldn't let you out there, right?
No, not Knapp.
Oh, it was Bigelow. Bigelow, yeah.
I think they're afraid of him because of his bullshit detector. Because I think that there's something hinky going on. I don't know what it is, but there's something hinky going on. I don't know because I like Travis Taylor. I'm a big fan of Travis Taylor.
Sure.
Been reading his stuff for years. I'd like to think better of him, but he even avoided Don Ecker when Don tried to make. He was told by our good friend. I'm not going to say John. Okay, I just said it, John.
That's fine.
John got him in contact with him, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to talk to him," and then just ghosted him.
I think the reality is with Don is when these people. This topic is handled with such kid gloves in the mainstream, and Don. When he has guests on, he asks really difficult questions. Mm-hmm. And he really will put your feet to the fire. And I think
former detective, he knows how to ask questions.
Of course. And I think Don does it in a very cordial way. But I think these people are just intimidated. Like someone
absolutely. I've told Don
that. They want to go on a show.
He avoided you.
And they want to go on a show and be told, "Do you believe in little green men?" Just big little cheesy questions. When Don's going to ask really deep questions because he has an understanding.
Well, Oberg totally ghosted.
Yeah, Oberg won't go on. None of these people will because they're not used to having to really defend their positions or elaborate in areas.
Answer on the uncomfortable questions.
Exactly, in areas that make them uncomfortable. And
I know that Travis is torn.
Yeah,
because
he's a mainstream guy. He's a mainstream guy with a mainstream reputation. And if he can keep it at the surface level and talk, man, that's cool. The meter went to the
Don won't let him do that.
The meter went left and right. That's all he talks about is the meter. It's funny. The meter. You watch that show, look at it. The meter.
Fire a rocket because he loves firing those rockets.
You shoot the rocket at the meter.
When shit starts happening, that meter goes up.
Exactly. And
that's 64.5 kilohertz.
I love that. There was one funny thing though, is they were doing ground penetrating radar on near this one building. And then Travis has got his meter looking for radiation right next to the guy doing the ground penetrating radar. He's like, look at the meter.
Meter's going off.
Getting a lot of magnetic. I'm like, well, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he's doing radar.
Magnet. So a lot of that I think is, it's for public consumption. But literally the guy 10 feet over is doing ground penetrating radar as he walks behind it and watches the meter go real. Well, yeah.
I'll tell you where my bullshit meter goes off is with the owner of it now, Bigelow.
Not Bigelow.
Not Bigelow. What's his name? I forget his name. He wanted to turn it into a park, but then he found it's too dangerous, so he can't. But the fact is there's no way, I don't believe it's possible to purchase that land with stuff hidden underneath it without him being told. There's some disclosure had to have taken place with Bigelow and him. When Bigelow sold it to him, there's something under that what do they call it? Mesa. Something under that mesa. I think it was put there by them, and I think that it had to have been disclosed to him. So I just feel like there's some bullshit going on there.
I've always just said they need to get the kid from the Gold Rush show to go over there with a bunch of his tractors and dig the whole freaking place up. That kid he'll solve Oak Island and the Skinwalker mystery in one day.
They've taken 11 years on Oak Island. It's driving me nuts. I can't watch it now. What I do is I wait for the whole season to go, and then I watch the final episode.
You can't watch it. Oh, we found a nail. You know what else had nails?
No, they really have.
They'll be like Treasure Chest has nails. Therefore, this nail held together a treasure chest. I'm like, well, it could have held up a sign. I could have done
that. Yeah, in that triangular pond, there's a ship-shaped thing in there.
Yeah.
And we're 2 years later and still don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know it is.
Come on, man. You're driving me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think that just shows you the mainstream and how they handle these topics and why shows like this are so important because nobody's really looking at this in any sense.
That's why I watch The Blacklist.
The Blacklist was a good show. I think it's
I liked it all the way up until the last 2 seasons, and they lost me. But man, Don got me watching. I didn't want to watch it. I wasn't interested. Don said, "I got to watch it." I watched it. I was so into it. And then when she dies, of the
shows they jump the shark at some point.
Her dying was the shark jump for me, and they lost me. And I'm like, well, where do you go now? Everything was tied to her.
I'm currently watching season 10.
Don won't listen to me.
Hopefully she didn't die in season 11. Because if she died in season 11, you just spoiled it for Don.
No, he knows. He's the one who got me to watch it, like I said, Stephen. I really do love
I'll tell you, now this is totally out of the ballpark, but I have come to appreciate James Spader like I never would have believed. Now, my wife...
He's an alien, by the way.
My wife, did a number of years of background acting. And she was on set with Spader on quite a few occasions, when he was doing Boston Legal. Well, she said in this one scene, she was a juror, and he was giving a summation. And she said in this one scene, they must have reshot that damn thing 8 or 10 times because whoever was directing wasn't happy with it. But they would cut, everybody take a minute break, they'd come back, roll. And Spader would just pick it up and he would give out this long summation on rote. She said, I never saw anything like that. So I said, yeah, this guy is something different. Now, the first time I ever saw him was in a movie back in about 89, whenever they did Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I saw him in this movie and I fell asleep, And they had to wake me up at the end of the movie. I was so bored by this thing. But I'll tell you, after that, that guy is something.
Well, I got to tell you, there's another film you should watch if you haven't, is Wolf with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer.
No, I saw that one.
That's a good flick.
That was in the 90s.
Yep.
Movie. Yeah.
I think it was 95, 96. It's a good film. It's very good. Spader is great in it. He plays a scumbag. He's so good at playing scumbags. He's a master of it. And then he can turn right around and play a likable person.
Oh, yeah. Well, this part in The Blacklist that he's playing, this concierge of crime. The
concierge of crime, elite, that's right.
The criminal elite. And he's likable, but how many times have I seen him pull out a piece and blow somebody away just because they looked at him wrong? I mean,
I used to know this Merc.
And he sells it.
I knew a Merc years ago, back when I was a teenager. He was like that, man. I love this guy. And then I found out, he was a cold-blooded killer. You pay him enough, he would do it. And I'm like, oh, my God. And I just started, getting away from him, going, I don't want to hang out with you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And where was this? Where are you from, Gary?
I'm from Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm kind of from everywhere, but that's where my dad took me in 1972 and raised me until adulthood.
Gotcha.
I was 8 years old.
So Don, I know that you had. Oh, actually, no. Your last guest canceled, correct? He was sick.
Who?
No, he showed up. We had a great show with him.
Don Schmidt.
Don Schmidt, yeah.
Yeah, he showed up.
Yeah.
What are his thoughts now on Roswell?
He's convinced that there was an actual event involving E.T.'s craft.
Okay. And Randall has taken a different take at this point, I think, right?
Well, look, I haven't really pushed Kevin on anything. He recently, his wife died. She was ill for some time. He was taking care of her. So I don't bother him with any of that stuff.
Understood. Because it seemed like his view shifted slightly. I'm
curious because there was one guy that we talked to, Don. I forget who it was. One of our guests said something about the multiple incidents in Roswell, that there wasn't just the one.
Well, that was Stanton Friedman's original hypothesis, is that 2 actually crashed into one.
Yeah, that there was an archaeological team that was working nearby, and they discovered another downed vehicle.
Well, once again, that goes to a point I made in my disclosure document that there very well may be a low-intensity conflict, at least low intensity
exactly.
as far we are concerned.
A Star Wars, a real one.
Yeah, between various factions. And, if you are going on if you're presuming that these things are from another star system, it makes no sense that they would fly here and then just crash, okay? It just doesn't make the technology that would have to involve would be mind-boggling. So what might explain that? Well, I saw in my time in Southeast Asia what causes aircraft to go down: battle damage. So,
or you can take a much more meta view and say that these people are pushing our technology along, and these are quote gifts to really move us to.
Well, the one thing they talk about on with Travis Taylor, he believes that there are stargates. He actually really believes that.
Interesting. Who has the tinfoil hat now?
All their investigation, his investigation, the way he's pushing, if you keep up on that show, is he's pushing the fact that he believes they have stargates.
Interesting.
Because the lights in the sky suddenly appear and then they fade and disappear.
Well, if that technology is viable, and it's basically what the hell was that guy's name? Something Eisenberg Bridge, wormhole.
That's really where the Stargate came from, is man-made controlled wormholes.
Right.
Or you can start hearing about that when I was little.
Right now, though, one of the big topics in academic people would think about this stuff is the idea of a simulation theory. So if this is a simulation,
us being in the Matrix, right?
We're not even we're just some sort of a program basically that and there's something that controls a simulation, and we're just sort of reliving history or something as they observe. There's nothing to say that the people that run the simulation, the intelligence that runs the simulation, just can't insert certain things in the sky at certain instances to gauge how the public's going to react to something completely inexplicable. So if you're going to subscribe to something like simulation theory, that means there has to be someone that built the simulation. And if it is a simulation and it's artificial, then all bets are off. They can insert a craft into the sky and take it out and judge the way society looks at it if they're really interested in studying us from that kind of a level. So it's funny to me that you hear people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who think simulation theory is a plausible thing, immediately shoot down something like UFOs, when if there is a simulation and this is a program from somebody of a higher intelligence, there's nothing to say that they can't insert into the program these sorts of anomalies for whatever reason. So
I think personally he's bought and paid for, guys.
Yeah, look, he's just the mainstream puppet.
We got one minute.
He's not a real physicist.
We got 1 minute left. Stephen, what's on your agenda? What are you up to?
You know what? I have a couple film projects that I want to look at. One involving this topic. I don't want to reveal too much. It's more of going to be a passion project, but it's something that I've been thinking about. So stay tuned.
Documentary or something else?
Documentary, yeah. So right now, and I'm still working on several documentaries unrelated to this topic, which I'm quite proud of. But yeah, just staying busy with the film stuff, Don, honestly.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that basically is it for us tonight. Next Monday, a very special show with a lady that I interviewed a few weeks back. We're going to have her on the day before Halloween, Ms. Heather Besser. And it should be a very, very interesting show. Guys, that is it for tonight. Stephen, a great pleasure. Stick around. Don't bail out right away.
Show.
I'm here.
Great show.
And that will be it for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great week, and we'll see you then. Good night.